Ava and Carol Detective Agency. The Mystery of the Pharaoh's Diamonds. Chapter 8. Operation Anaconda. Location: Burrito Gordito, Mexican restaurant, 5:45 p.m. There I was in the belly of a giant metal anaconda, surrounded by microscopic bacterial organisms. Ava's dad paused to take a bite of his beef burrito. "Dad, weren't you in the ventilation system at an aquarium?" "Don't knock my dramatic flair," smiled her dad. "Look, you don't make it on the Discovery Channel by being boring. You could help, you know, by adding some dramatic music." "That would be Carol. She could mesmerize any audience with her haunting woodwind overtures," said Ava, pointing her burrito at her friend. "Oh my God, Ava, let your dad finish. I, for one, am on the edge of my seat, Mr. Clark." "More like the edge of insanity," muttered Ava. Ava turned to her dad. "You're a marine biologist. Aren't you supposed to be researching things involving, I don't know, water?" "If you'd let me finish my story, everything will make sense," exclaimed Mr. Clark. "Let your father have his moment," said Ava's mother, patting her hand. "He's gonna get exasperated, isn't he? I hate when he gets exasperated. Last Christmas, it was that cheerful story he told about Legionnaire's disease that made the holiday so much lovelier." "I know." Her mother smiled. "I'm sure this one ends on a much happier note. Right, Charles?" She gave him that special look that meant, "Happy ending, or we're having meatloaf the rest of the week." "Yes, of course, dear. I do hope you know that you've completely destroyed the momentum of my story. Now, where was I?" "In the belly of the avocado," muttered Ava. "Anaconda. Ah, yes." My headlamp began to flicker, sweat poured down my face, and then I realized my egregious mistake. I had left the Q-tip swabs in my pocket. Not to be deterred, and thanks to my years of yoga, using the soaring eagle tilts its wings technique, I maneuvered in such a way that I was able to retrieve the swabs from my pocket. "Way to go, Mr. Clark," beamed Carol. "Thank you, Carol," said Mr. Clark, nodding appreciatively. I reached out slowly, my hands shaking. What crazed organism inhabited this metallic serpent? "It's a question we are all asking ourselves," winked Ava. With expert precision, I collected the deadly samples and began crawling backward. Just in time, too, because the huge exhaust fan at the end of the ventilation system kicked in. A quick side note, I was having a brilliant hair day until then. "So I'm glad you survived, Dad. Your story is truly epic, and I believe the table next to us was enthralled too." Ava's dad looked at the table beside them. An Indian family rewarded him with a smattering of applause. "Thank you," he said graciously, acknowledging their gratitude. "So I know you are all wondering what evil pathogen I discovered." "Yes," whispered Carol. "Yes," chorused the Indian family, leaning forward in their seats. "It turned out to be," he paused dramatically, "the nefariously evil Stachybotrys." "Oh!" exclaimed the Indian woman in a high-pitched voice. She dropped her fork to her plate with a clatter as her husband patted her hand. "Horrible," the man whispered. Ava's father nodded. "Yes, indeed." "I'm sorry. Stachybots what?" asked Ava. "Black mold. The staff at the aquarium kept getting sick with crazy respiratory problems, and no one could figure out why. I had a hunch that it could be the air they were breathing in. Sure enough, their ventilation system was filled with it. I don't like to brag. Modesty and my doctoral ethics prevents me from doing so, but I'm pretty sure I saved their lives." Another smattering of applause erupted from the Indian family. Mr. Clark accepted their platitudes graciously by nodding and mouthing, "Thank you." "Great job, Dad," said Ava, beaming proudly. "A real-world example of biology in action."
"Great story, Mr. Clark," smiled Carol. "Excuse me, I'll be right back."
She pushed her chair from the table and headed toward the restroom. "Great. See, Dad? Your story gave her indigestion." "That's ludicrous," said Mr. Clark, brushing away Ava's comment. "Carol's very astute and simply appreciates quality storytelling." Ava's mind drifted away from the dinner table as her parents settled into a conversation about work and current events. She felt guilty not sharing everything she and Carol had discovered with her parents, but they were so close to solving the mystery. Ava jumped as her phone vibrated against her leg. Her eyes flew up to her parents, expecting them to ask her why she jumped, but they were deep into their conversation and hadn't noticed. Ava needed to get her phone out without being seen. There was one rule that her parents enforced: no phones at the table. She tried covering her phone with the black cloth napkin, but she couldn't see the message. She looked around and then her eyes narrowed. "Ma'am," she called out to the waitress who was wiping down a table across from her. "May I have a dessert menu?" The waitress smiled.
"Just one?"
Her parents looked up, trying to catch up to Ava's conversation. "Good point. You may want to bring 3. My parents love coffee with their ice cream." "Thank you, Ava. That was really thoughtful," smiled her mom. "You're welcome." Ava returned the smile. The waitress returned with the menus. Ava's mom thanked her, and soon everyone's attention was turned to perusing the delicious desserts. As her parents focused on a sugary delicacy, Ava stealthily slid her phone out of her pocket. She clicked on the text message. Carol had sent a picture of the top of a large industrial building, and under it were the words, "Prestige Fine Arts Auction Company." Ava stared at the picture of the top of the building and texted back, "How far away is that bathroom?" A moment later, Ava's phone buzzed again.
"Your dad gave me the idea. It's our way into the building. Their ventilation system."
"Are you sending me all of this from a bathroom stall?"
"Yes. I was sitting here thinking."
"You want us to break into the Prestige auction house. And my mom thinks you are the responsible one."
"Do you want to stop the thieves?"
"Of course, but can we just talk about this when we get back to my house?"
"It's the only way, Aves. We'll call it Operation Anaconda,"
Carol texted back. Ava could hear Carol's voice in her head, bubbling over with excitement. "Are you returning to the table anytime soon? Or should I have a care package sent to the restroom?"
"Care package sounds great. Stall number 3.
Chapter 9. Carol Gets a Chance to Vent. Carol stared out the car window, willing Ava's dad to drive more quickly.
"I should have insisted on him getting the double espresso."
It was already 7:15 p.m. and getting dark outside. In order for her master plan to succeed, they needed to get to the auction house fast without Ava's parents finding out. "You girls are mighty quiet. Everything okay back there?" Ava's mom turned toward the girls, leaning between the front seats. "Yes, I'm in the midst of a food coma," Ava moaned. "I think the double-layer chocolate fudge cake with 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream did me in. I may find the closest lake and beach myself on the shore."
You should have split it with Carol like your dad and I did. The cinnamon apple pie was perfect for 2 people.
I believe that splitting a dessert in Massachusetts is breaking some sort of town ordinance, Ava replied.
Definitely against the law,
Carol agreed.
It's under the Dessert Sharing Act of 1812. I believe it reads, "Desserts are not to be shared anyway, anyhow." I believe it was amended in 1813 by the Romantic Couples Act, laughed Mrs. Clark. I believe it now reads, "Sharing is caring." Good one, Mrs. Clark.
Carol grinned. Ugh. Ava leaned her forehead against the cool glass of the car window. Tonight's a great telescope night, said Ava's dad as they pulled into their driveway. Carol looked up through the moonroof. Even with the front porch light and spotlights illuminating the entire front of the house, they could clearly see the stars. Ava smiled. Dad, you're right. She turned to Carol. We could set up the tent and the telescope. We could tell ghost stories. Carol caught on to Ava's ruse immediately.
I love that idea. We haven't moon and planet watched in forever.
Is it okay if we set up the tent tonight in the backyard? Ava asked. We haven't camped out for like months, and it's gonna be cold soon. Fine with me, said her dad. You know me. I never get in the way of you exploring nature. Unless you were climbing into an active volcano, that's where I draw the line. I lava you, Dad, smiled Ava. I lava you too, he said, erupting with laughter.
If you're enjoying Thomas Lockhaven's audiobook content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way to help out the channel.